Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video we're going to be talking Kaspa ASICs, specifically the IceRiver ASICs. They did just have a huge restock, price reductions, and it's looking better than the freaking Bitmains, right? While we're expecting this, we're expecting for them to respond to Bitmain's price reduction, and they did just that, and they look pretty appealing, right? So we're going to go over that, going to go over the prices, which ones I would eye the most, and as to why, and things to take into account, right? So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned, all right? So let's get to this thing. Let's get right to it. So prices. The KS3, now the big dog, 8 terahash, 17.6, right? So slightly undercutting Bitmain, which they did that on purpose, which I mean they've been cheaper than them the whole time. But next one, KS3M, 6 terahash, 12K. This typically has been the better bang for the buck. Now, though, the ones I'm eyeing the most are these two guys, KS1 and KS2. Reason being is that in the past, the best bang for the buck was the KS3L, KS3M, right? The price per terahash was a good chunk better. It was a good amount of savings versus buying like KS1s, KS2s to that equivalent, right? So the bang for the buck was definitely there. Now, though, they scale in pretty well. Like, yes, it's still going to be cheaper to go with the bigger dogs, but it's not that much of a discount. Right, so let's go over that real quick. KS1, 1 terahash, $2,300. Okay, in comparison with the KS0, it's like getting 10 KS0s, so getting each one for 230 bucks, right? So value there. Comparing it with the KS2, which is double that, right? So it'd bring you up to $4,600, but these guys are 44, so there would be a savings of $200, right? So is there a savings? Yes, but again, you're reducing your risk by getting the cheaper guy. The real magic happens when you go up to the KS3M. So at 12K, 6 terahash, that means it's $2,000 a terahash. Okay, so $300 savings per terahash in comparison with the KS1. So yes, it's definitely a saving, especially multiplied by the 6, it's $1,800, but it's not as significant in the past. Huge caveat though, this is the difference maker. Overclocks, right, which are new to the game, but it's something we got to factor in now. KS3M currently does not have any. As we know, it's essentially just the overclock KS3L. So is it possible for them to get some in the future where it's like a 10% bump or maybe just an efficiency bump? For sure, right? But let's factor in what we do know, and it's that the KS1 currently has one, getting it up to 1.2. And they're working on some to get them even higher, get them up to 1.4. But let's factor in even just the 1.2 because this scales perfectly. Now, because of that slight bump, it gets it to the point now where it only takes 5 KS1s to equal that KS3M. So if we multiply those numbers, now it's 11,500 to get the equivalent of the KS3M. Meaning the scale is almost exactly on point, and you're reducing your risk factor because just the entry point is so much lower, right? That's kind of the risk with these, is that the profitability is going to continue to drastically change, and the prices of these miners is going to continue to also, right? Because it kind of coincides with that. But by having a cheaper entry point, even if it does go in half from here, if we go to $2,300 down to $1,150, yes, that would suck, but it's not that big of a hit. Especially in comparison to going from 12K to 6K potentially. That is going to hurt, right? Especially ask all those Bitmain guys who bought at 45 and now that thing's at 18. Okay, so it's something that can happen. It is possible. These prices are going to continue to go down because the profitability is going to continue to go down. Okay, so you have to factor that in, but now it makes it more appealing to jump in if you didn't necessarily want to take a huge risk, right? It makes it more appealing because just that entry point is so much lower. Okay, so on top of not only the price of the unit, but because it scales efficiency-wise also, maintaining and running the unit is also much cheaper, right? In case profitability does go down, again, it's only 600 watts, this thing. Okay, so the profitability, if we look at it, this is what's crazy. It's only $2,300, but your profit currently is $14 a day. Of course, though, please factor in this is going to change drastically, right? Don't go just purely based off of this and be like, oh man, I'm going to ROI in X amount of time. No, the hash rate and difficulty is going to continue to go up, and also the emission schedule. Kaspa has a very aggressive emission schedule, being that reduction, right? It's that monthly reduction and going down 6% every month, equating to, after 12 months, being the equivalent of a true halving. Okay, so you have those two huge forces going against you. One, we know that this is happening for sure. The other one is purely speculation based, right? We can make our predictions. We can think of where it's going to go. It's possible that we go up to 60, we go up to 80 in the next month, month and a half, right? That's where I'm kind of curious to see where we're going to be at by Thanksgiving. Once this huge Bitmain batch comes out and this IceRiver batch comes out, kind of give us a better idea where we're going, right? But just factor in that it's extremely hard to do predictions on how high the hash rate is going to go, especially farther down the road, especially if you're looking into like March, April next year, and then farther down even that. Because of the fact that there's so much room for it to continue to go up, right? The difference between like why we were doing those, not Kaspa, but Kadena, the KA3 predictions and the K7 predictions, we were basing it off of the break-even point, right? That's why our predictions ended up coming to fruition. We're fairly close. And that's always kind of against the narrative that, oh, I heard there's going to be 10,000 units and all this nonsense, because at that point, nothing would be profitable. It would make no sense for them to just tank the profitability like that. Is it possible over time, once there's price appreciation? Sure, maybe next month or next year. If we get price appreciation, that'll happen, but not initially. Okay? So that's why we're pretty close, right, as to where it ended up being at. The difference here is that it's going to take, that there's so much room for it to continue to go up and for the big dog to still be profitable. Okay? Again, the KS3, the big one, the 9.4, still making $140 a day. $140 a day, even after the freaking network hash rate just 40x. It's insane. It's mind-blowing. So factor in, again, if the hash rate were to double again, $70. Still pretty good. Doubles again after that, $35. Still pretty good. Doubles again after that, $17. Still pretty good. Doubles again after that, $8 profitability. Comparing it down to these, it's still pretty dang good. Okay, does that mean that once it's down to that profitability, if that ever happens, it's going to be at that price? No, it's going to scale down, right? Each time that happens, each time these huge batches comes out, it's going to scale down. Can it get to the point where this spring, this thing is only like 3 to 5K, 5 to 7K because of that? Sure. Is it super likely though? We don't really know, right? The only thing we do know is that even if they make that many, that big guy will still be profitable. They'll still be able to sell that thing. This is the crazy part in all this. And that's why it's reality kind of hard to make a prediction, right? I think most people are pretty much in the guesstimate that anywhere from 80 to 100 petahash by end of year. But then even beyond that, it's really hard to say, right? So you have all these forces going against you. At the end of the day, you have to kind of come up with your own idea of where you think it's going to go based off of that, right? We can go that high, or things chill out. Maybe not that many people purchase them because everybody still has PTSD from the Kadena miners, and we only go to 60 and we stay there, right? That's also possible too, but you have to kind of think of these scenarios, keep these kinds of things in mind. But again, it's a huge factor when the miners were so expensive, but now being at this $2,300 price point, it does make it more intriguing, interesting to potentially jump in because of that reduced risk factor. Potentially. Right? Who knows, right? Because at this point, it's looking like the KS1 is the new KS0, essentially. Okay, these things are pretty much going to be, not necessarily phased out, but to the point where they're not going to be very appealing. Even at like $250, $300, people are going to be looking at this guy more because it's going to be $1,000, $1,500, and it's going to be 10 times as many, right? So you have to factor those things in, think about those things, take those things into consideration. Also, when you're doing your calculations or any predictions, focus on your yield versus the fiat profitability, right? Because that's something that can affect the profitability and make it look bad when it's really not. Okay, focus on your yield because, again, right now, price-wise, we're at the high end. We're not too far still from the all-time high. Is it possible we stay here and continue to stair-step up? Sure, but it's also possible we get a correction, kind of like we did in this range here back in June, and we go down to 3.5 cents, 3 cents. Okay, and it's going to make this profitability look horrible, but even though the yield is the same, right? So factor those things and think about those things. Focus more so on the yield versus that, right? And especially compare it to what it'd be like if you just purchased it, right? Kind of think about those things. You should be running those calculations, right? Think about those things definitely for sure. Another big thing to think about is what to do if you were to get a dud, right? So this is another annoying thing with these harder to come by miners, right? So like this just happened to Coastal recently. They had a KS3M that was bad hashboard right off the bat, the thing literally just blew up. Right? So number one, downtime. You're going to have to wait for this thing to get warranted, RMA'd, repaired. Wait for it. So keep in mind of that potential. And IceRiver not being so hot with their customer service, right? So they reached out to them, and initially they were like, nope, you're going to have to pay us $5K if you want another hashboard. So they're like, what? So they put them on blast on Twitter. People jumped in, and luckily it looks like they're doing the right thing. But just factor those kinds of things in, right? It's possible for, to have a bad PSU, a bad control board. So if you're thinking of getting one, they are relatively cheap. They are available from IceRiver as well as some of the stores. Again, the PSU is $49, control board $69. Maybe something that may be worthwhile because again, if you have downtime and you gotta like RMA this thing and send it back and then wait for the other one, it could be up to like a month of profitability you're gonna use, right? When you could have just spent the $50 on getting one of these things. So these are the kind of things you gotta think about if you're thinking about jumping in. So if you are thinking of purchasing, number one, I would not purchase from IceRiver directly if you're in the US because you will get hit with those tariffs with these bigger units, right? It's going to factor in another 30% on top of this price, okay? To avoid that, you want to go through a lot of the resellers, a lot of the stores because they will have a lower declared value and you typically are able to avoid that. So even though the price might be a tad bit higher, it's going to definitely be cheaper because of that, right? So like Miner Bros has it at $2,500, which is a little bit higher, but again, you're going to avoid those fees because it's the all-in price, right? BT Miners hasn't updated their prices yet. They do have the KS3M price up, and that is there. Out of the bigger stores, Nhash is a good one. I personally haven't purchased through them. I know some of you guys have. If any of you guys have any experience with Nhash, please put it in the comments. Let us know how your experience was, right? So in case people are interested, because out of the big box stores, they have the most aggressive price, right? Their KS1 is actually at $2,100, right? But factor in $200 shipping, so it's $2,300 ship, which is still pretty freaking good, right? And then even the KS3M is at $11K. And the KS3, $16K, which is undercutting even IceRiver directly pretty good. Okay, so factor these things in, think about these things. A lot of the stores are going to update it, so any of the other stores you prefer, you're cool with, hit them up, right? Those are the stores you want to feel comfortable with because you're going to have some form of customer service. If you're more comfortable with the process, if you're comfortable with buying directly through a supplier where it's going to be cheaper, could also head into the Kaspa Discord, go into the Mining and Hardware channel, look for T-Swift. A lot of people have purchased directly through him. He does have a direct supplier, so there's no middleman. So he's going to most likely have the best prices, and also typically, historically, he's had some of the faster shipping times, typically even beating IceRiver directly, right? His sources have been doing well. People who have purchased through him have done extremely well because of that. But keep in mind, again, this is not a huge storefront. Don't expect that customer service and all that kind of stuff. Keep those things in mind, right? It's going to be more of a direct sale, right? So that's going to be there. But just, keep these things in mind, guys. There is a ton of factors. There is a ton of risk. At the end of the day, you got to come up with your own conclusion, right? Take people's things into consideration. Take these things I was talking about into consideration. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you, right? Do you want to risk it for the biscuit? Do you want to be more cautious? Is it better just buy? Again, it's much more appealing at this price point versus these price points. But at the end of the day, it's up to you, right? You have to do that risk versus reward and see where you're at with it, right? But again, this is an interesting way to get some exposure, especially if you don't have any Kaspa exposure at all or very minimal, right? Part of the reason for me, initially, it was extremely appealing because this is even cheaper than the price point I was predicting, is just I already have a good amount of exposure to Kaspa. And for me, there's just a ton of risk at this moment, right? Again, if you're interested in doing it, the sooner the better, right? Your yields are going to be higher. Literally, even a week can make a huge difference, right? Ask any of those guys who got in super early. Those are the ones who really made out, right? The guys who got in super early. But if you're thinking about taking that little step in, this is a way, but you want to get in early because chances are because of these price points, they're probably going to sell pretty quickly, right? Again, $2,300. Even the KS2 at $4,400 is pretty drastically outperforming a lot of the other ASICs. Not even a lot. Let me rephrase that. The majority, almost all of them. Look at it. Number 3 through 6 is all of these guys. Okay, outperforming all these guys that have been around for quite a while. Okay, and it's very intriguing, right? It's extremely efficient, makes a lot of money, only 600 watts, but just keep all those factors in mind that chances are in 30 days it's going to be half of what it is right now, both price of the miner itself and the profitability, right? Potentially, who knows? Again, make your own decision, come up with your own conclusion. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you guys are doing. Are you guys degenning in? Are you guys adding more? I know some of you guys who have already been in have just been continuing to scale in, and that's been a pretty smart strategy because each one is just paying itself off, right? Or some of you guys have been who got in early, it paid itself off, you sold that one, added more, and just continued that cycle, right? So different strategies, different things to think about. But again, if you're interested, the time is now. The sooner the better, because literally it's dropping daily. Literally, it's been crazy how much this freaking hash rate is going up, but should have a clearer picture in about a month and a half as to how many were sold in this big batch, right? That's what I'm kind of curious on. So again, let me know in the comments, guys. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, guys, and I am out.